this panel, we're going to talk about brands in film in all kinds of ways, about brands becoming stakeholders in the film industry, either as a more charitable example, like Koji-san, or as more branded entertainment. So we've got some real experts with us. I would like to call them on one by one. First up, can I welcome Rebecca Depar, who is project manager at the Fondation Prada Film Fund. And then Elsa Huisman, who is founder of 111 Avocats, a law firm in Paris that specializes working with major luxury clients that I can't name. And then Philip Mandela, who is global head of Red Bull Studios. We all love Red Bull. It keeps us going here at Cannes. And last but not least, Brian Newman, who is founder of Subgenre, which is a company that specializes in all of this, and he's based in New York. Thank you all so much. Cannes is very busy, haven't we noticed? So we really appreciate you taking time. Brian, I'm going to pick on you first. Because you work with a range of clients, including REI, Patagonia, Oatly, the oat milk company, and many more others in the past.
Yep.
Where do you see the sort of overall picture about how brands are working in film now? And it might be evolving as we sit here.
Yeah, absolutely. So my previous life, I was last CEO at Tribeca Film Institute and did not expect to go into brands. And when Patagonia called me to help them release a movie they made, no one at Cannes would want to invite us to talk about that whatsoever. And I think the field's been maturing over the last 13 to 15 years, and you're seeing many more brands getting into the space. I think you're also, quite frankly, seeing more of an acceptance of it because, let's be honest, money from other sources is drying up.
Soft money is drying up a little bit.
Especially public funding.
Yes.
So everyone's like, oh, well, maybe those brands are my ticket. And it doesn't always work that way, but people are hoping that'll be the case. But I think the brands themselves are maturing in what they want to do. So now you're seeing things like Amelia Perez that you wouldn't see before.
That was Yves Saint Laurent.
Yeah, Yves Saint Laurent
partly involved in that.
Was heavily involved in. So just like two examples of who we work with. One is the company WeTransfer.
Everybody knows WeTransfer. We use it all the time, right? Yes.
And when WeTransfer first started, they didn't have a lot of money. So what they would do is just promote people on that splash page you get when you're moving your file over. And it would send tons of traffic to those artists. And as they started to make money, they started investing in making films. And what they do is, because they want to support artists. So going back to what Koji-san was saying, it's about your values alignment and what the company cares about. And WeTransfer cares about artists. So they go to artists and say, what's the one that you've been wanting to make that no one else will fund? We'll fund that. And among the many films they funded, as one example, is Anil Karia and Riz Ahmed's The Long Goodbye, which won the Oscar for Best Short Live Action Film 2 years ago. So
again, the art. It's not a product placement like, hi, Riz, I'm going to transfer you something on WeTransfer.
No.
That doesn't win an Oscar.
If you watch that film, it's online for free now. It is about future Britain, not too future Britain, where people are rounding up immigrants and killing them. You wouldn't think a brand would want to be involved in that.
Yeah.
A second company I work with is REI, which is an outdoor retailer only based in the U.S., but they sell Patagonia, North Face, and things like that. And they really care not so much about like action sports. They want to get people just outdoors in nature, have a good time, get the health benefits of nature. So they funded Kira Sedgwick's directorial feature debut, which was called Space Oddity, which is about a young kid. It's a fiction film about a young kid who wants to go to Mars. And you think, why does an outdoor brand fund a film about someone going to Mars? Well, it's because you're only going to Mars if you're trying to get away from an Earth we ruined. And so that enables them to talk about sustainability in a way that's not like a direct didactic documentary hitting you over the head. And when the film came out, there's no REI in the movie whatsoever. Yeah. They promote it alongside the distributor. That brings extra marketing to your campaign. And it's a win-win for everyone. So those are just a couple examples.
That's brilliant examples. And I'm going to add a third that you told me about, which was Oatly working on, is it a documentary series about dairy farming and some problems there. Yeah.
Oatly, the oat milk company, battled out of Sweden, wanted to make a film about the idiocies of the dairy lobby and the dairy industry and things they do. But they knew they couldn't make it themselves. They're not filmmakers. So they went to investigative journalism, documentary filmmakers, and said, we want to do this. The filmmakers decided to turn it into a 4-part episodic series. And we're in the middle of closing a deal for distribution on that film right now in the U.S. And it'll be out later this summer, and then Oatly will help promote the series. It's not about Oatly. It doesn't have them in the film, although we acknowledge that they funded it, especially in that case, because you need to know that they're talking about the dairy industry, and they have a vested interest in that. Not all brands are going to do something like that. But these are films that, as you'll hear from these other guests in just a second, they're real movies that are playing real film festivals, winning awards, and hopefully getting seen by people. It's more about values alignment with the brand and not about product placement as often, although it can be that sometimes too.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Philip, you and I met probably a decade ago talking about some similar topics because Red Bull was one of the OGs in this space, really saw the power of film or content, moving image as a brand. Can you talk us through a little bit of the history and how you've evolved with Red Bull Studios?
Absolutely. So I think Red Bull is quite a good example to talk about the various phases, or at least that we went through on this journey. And I myself was part of that journey for quite a long time. And I've, leading up to this panel, I was able to identify sort of 3 phases, largely speaking, that Red Bull went through. And I would say the first phase...
Oh, I think Philip's mic is cutting out. Why don't you take mine? And we'll share.
And there's another one coming. And so I would say the first phase really was opportunity-driven, where we're just committed, or Red Bull was committed to telling great stories, getting great visuals of the athletes. And eventually that ambition led to films and entertainment pieces that just broke out of the niche. And I mean, it's still a niche film, but some of you might recall a film called Art of Flight about snowboarding that just really transcended the niche. And it wasn't that we were doing things differently, it was just like it got so big that people from outside of the specific scene were taking an interest in the phenomenon, so to speak. Then there was a second phase, which actually came with some internal complication, and that was when Red Bull focused on creating their own channels, also at a very early stage. So there was a bit of a, are we producing for our own channels? Are we producing for the market? And I would say during that phase, we were lucky to have a few projects come our way as part of those efforts in connecting with great people, great filmmakers, identifying subject matters of substance. And this is actually where Brian and I first met, competing for a movie, which was The Dawn Wall.
Everybody see The Dawn Wall. Remember that. That was great.
I always like to refer to it as the other climbing film of 2018. Obviously, it was the year of Free Solo, which is a great example of what we're talking about here as well. But I think Dawn Wall was the first project where we really set it up along filmmaking and film financing mechanisms. And this was kind of an odd one out because we didn't put it on the channel, but we didn't have a full-blown strategy. And now we're kind of in the third phase where, with the creation of Red Bull Studios, we've sort of formalized and we tap into the experiences and connections and networks that we've built over the years, and really try to establish a professional way of telling stories together with great filmmakers. Our go-to model these days is co-financing because I think it brings a lot of hygiene and health into the projects. And that's what we do as Red Bull Studios. Obviously, there's a much larger content engine at play at Red Bull at large.
Yeah.
But so Red Bull Studios is kind of the continuation of those bigger, larger projects, and that's where we are at this point.
But big Red Bull parent company would not make a feature film or work on a feature film, or have
if they did. If we're doing it,
yes,
Red Bull is doing it, but we're a specific arm
of that. Okay. And can you tell us, I know you've got a new film that's being readied called The Balloonists, I believe. Can you tell us how that came about, how it was structured, and why that really represents, maybe it's this new phase of what works well at Red Bull.
Well, I mean, there's examples of films that don't carry the Red Bull logo at all, except for the animated logo of Red Bull Studios at the very beginning, but that's really not what we're after. That's just a very normal animated logo. We really felt that the balloonist story, the exploration aspect of it, the adventure aspect of it, and really expresses a lot of values and the philosophy that links up with the Red Bull philosophy. And this is really why we wanted to be part of the project. And yeah, it was an amazing experience working with Anonymous Content, Submarine Distributing, John Dower, amazing director. So we really feel like that the Red Bull philosophy can be seen in the film itself. And once you see the film, I think it's not hard to make that connection. And so I think we heard that in the keynote speech just before. It's about linking a brand philosophy, which in our case is Mr. Mateschitz, the owner and founder of Red Bull, always said it's about giving wings to people and ideas, which I guess in generic terms is true to a lot of film projects, but specifically in the cases or in the projects that we get involved with, this aligned greatly with the brand philosophy. And that's the reason we entered, and we're very much looking forward to the UK theatrical premiere coming up next week, actually.
Oh yeah, I've been invited to something.
Nice
I believe.
theatrical release in the UK, and we're very happy about that.
And with that film, will Red Bull support marketing efforts? Obviously, you've got distribution partners. So you're not distributing it yourself, or could you, at the end of the value chain, maybe get the rights, or how does that work with what you do with it?
Well, we approach every project individually, so distribution strategy is crafted for each project individually, as is the financing and the production makeup. And so generally, I think we represent a lot of things that even distributors are looking for: access to certain audiences, being able to connect with younger audiences, community-based marketing. And so sometimes there's an overlap, and we'll set it up as a strategy. But as you said, we don't see ourselves as a distributor. Yeah. We see ourselves as a strategic partner throughout. I think if we're at that headline, I would say you should look at Red Bull Studios as an independent production company that's embedded in the much larger environment of Red Bull, which does two things. It gives us access, unprecedented access, true access, and it also allows us to be strategic in certain aspects of the distribution process, but we don't take on distribution.
Okay, that's good.
We want to be strategically involved, and also it depends project by project. Balloonist is a very straightforward standard distribution play, yeah. And so I very much look forward to attending the premiere as a guest.
Good luck. I've been a bad feminist, leaving our amazing, powerful women hanging down there. But Elsa, I would love to come to you next, because you've had a fascinating career that you... Okay, yeah. We'll share, maybe. Yeah. You've had a fascinating career, because I know you used to work in the United States, and then you came back to Paris, and I'm not going to name your clients because they are so important that we need to keep sort of confidential. But it's some major luxury brands, for instance. And how have you seen Europe become more open to these ideas? I think Brian's already mentioned it. You know, it used to be seen as an American branded content. How are you seeing European brands and European filmmakers maybe be more open to these ideas?
Well, I think, sorry. So I think, yeah, the basically in the US, the idea that filmmakers and IPs and art in general and filmmaking in general would be connected to some kind of financial valuation was something very bad to hear from, and that European filmmakers and producers were sort of not very adapted to. And as
France, the home of the auteur.
France being such a huge territory for public subsidies and public financing, also there was not necessarily a very strong necessity to co-finance or bring more financing to the table to films in the first place. And as things evolved and the market got so disrupted by the streamers, just the way the market evolves, I think they were all looking by necessity to finding alternative financing, and so they came up with private equity, and of course the brands also kicked in. And I think the attitude of the brands, even from a European perspective, was also to look at filmmaking and films in general as an alternative to traditional advertising, which was not really something they could rely upon anymore. The traditional advertising that used to be very easy to navigate was just going down, and
like TV and print advertising, all of that. Yeah.
Obviously, TV channels don't buy any more advertising, and that's common knowledge for everyone since a few years now. So they had to look into different ways of seducing their audience and their clients, and luxury brands have been very, very keen to finding these alternatives. So obviously they looked into, well, films and different sources or arts. I think some brands have been very known for investing into other arts, contemporary art, scenography and design, and films were like a little more tricky because I think the most difficult part for brands to step into films was because precisely European producers were not very much addressing how to find a space for them in terms of, obviously in terms of waterfall in the co-production deals, but also in terms of visibility. And because of this relationship, this tricky relationship between money and art, from a European perspective, it was more difficult. And also because, as you were just mentioning, filmmakers have been very ambivalent about this. And I think, again, today, well, first of all, luxury brands have this advantage to other brands of being very prestigious. So at some
and
point,
having maybe some long history you can draw upon sometimes too. Yeah.
Sometimes the official designer attached to a brand is also a friend of different filmmakers. That's a way to navigate it. Well, it's very well known to everyone that Anthony Vaccarello from Saint Laurent has been personally deciding on the films he wanted to pick, and not the reverse way. So that's a personal relationship that he entertained with specific form of films that he wanted to side with. I think the challenge for the next years is to grow this market and make it more general and more industrial than just on a case-to-case basis, and and sort of detached from the personal relationship of brand designer or brand CEO saying, "Oh, I have this appetence for this film because it's this director and only this director, or eventually this actor." So the idea is also trying to help both sides, whether producers and production companies, but also the brands, to understand how to get the best of this kind of deal, and not be ashamed of talking about money and how there's a return to that.
Do you see some investors willing to put in private equity, not just their name or something? Like, are they putting in private equity hoping to make a profit, or hoping to potentially, just expand the brand presence in a really cool way? Like how they used to spend ad money, they don't make a profit on that. Exactly. How are you seeing it?
That's the whole point. That's part of the arguments that I'm trying to raise. It really depends on the purpose of the brand's positioning and also what they put into the film. So obviously it's not the same deal if you're not putting real cash money into a film, but you're just giving products, which is one way of getting involved as a brand into a film, but which is not practically very helping in terms of financing the film. So that's one way, which obviously does not convert into shares of the film. But when we're looking at a brand who's financing either the P&A of the film distribution, like some brands do, or eventually the financing the development, or even a production gap, which is obviously something that most producers are relying upon because that's the most difficult money to find. We need to be able to address a real and serious share of the waterfall that comes to producers, and which is eventually real money. The only problem behind this is that we never know. We all speculate on how films are going to do. It's a very uncertain market, as everyone knows.
Yes.
So the best you can do, and that's always what I've been telling producers, is at least be honest and come straight on what you can offer and how you can give space. And I was very recently working on the Justine Strier's next film, who's actually shooting right now in English language. We ended up having one brand who didn't put any money, but who will be credited and giving products. Okay. But we also completed the financing with a small investor, and Justine herself, who's a co-producer, gave out some of her shares on her film to address the concerns, to make a decent position to this equity investor.
I love it. Brian, did you have something to add there on the finance? Is that mic on?
That's the not so good mic.
Do you want mic?
This is not good mic. The REI project I mentioned with Cure Sedgwick is just one example of them. They put in 20% of the equity in a just under 5 million US production. Now, most of the brands that I work with, they don't do it as equity. They're doing it as sponsorship, and they wouldn't even know how to book the revenue if it came back. But some are getting more savvy and then now wanting to be part of the equity in those co-production models. They know they're probably getting involved with something that's going to be more commercial. It has the support of others. But I think it's just as crucial for producers, like you said, to be really honest with the brands of the state of the marketplace and the possibility of returns, because the last thing we need to do is burn a bunch of brands and they never want to do this ever again.
If you lie to them once, they won't come back.
Right.
Yeah. Rebecca, finally, I want to ask you about the Fundación Prada Film Fund, which is very different than what we've heard so far. It's much more along, it's not for refugees necessarily, but it's much more along the lines of artistic funding, hands-off. Just tell us a little bit about the fund and why. I mean, Prada's has this Fundación for many years, done amazing. I mean, there's an actual building, they supported visual art and all kinds of art forms. But why was now the right time to do a film fund?
The Film Fund is a natural evolution of the activity that Fondazione Prada has been doing in many fields of contemporary culture. That can be art, music, science, education. Specifically with cinema, in the past 20 years, Fondazione has financed film, has financed restoration. Inside the Fondazione Prada in Milano, there is a beautiful cinema. So there is a long-standing relationship between Fondazione Prada and cinema. How it came up now? Well, it's incredible how much this kind of initiative is needed, and how much one system like the one that we have, that is an annual call that is open basically to a large number of filmmaker and production company, giving what we call soft money, can really help independent filmmaker going through their work. And this is the main idea of Fondazione, is really to support artistically ambitious project in a very independent way. So we are completely, as you were saying, hands off the project.
Yeah.
Once the project got selected, it got funded, and then they have to do their job.
Yeah.
They have to do films.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you got many applications. I want to mention that Hlynur Pálmason's On Land and Sea, which was pitching here last year at the Investor Circle, is one of the first to be funded. Very artistic, very ambitious. He's such an auteur. But, you know, when you're going through all those applications, what's Prada looking for? Because it's a little bit different than REI wants to show the earth. Because you're very hands-off artistically, but what kind of filmmakers do you want to be associated with? Or is it more that we really believe in just this filmmaker and they don't have enough money to make their film?
Oh, no, well, I think it's... I think that Fondazione is really looking for what is an idea of author in contemporary cinema. Yeah. So it can come from a very established directory, like Pálmason here last year, or in the last call, we also supported 3 first-time filmmakers.
Wow.
So it's for us, it's really, the project, the artistic quality of the project is the top criteria for us. And then really this idea of research in cinema that can be in every genre of cinema, that can be more like related to normal genre cinema or more artistic, but we want to see people that are really looking for their auteur voice and for something that is unique in their own cinema language.
Yeah. And we should really make it clear. Let's say Helena Palmerson likes I think it's a period film, so it won't work, but he likes the idea of Prada working on the costumes. That's just not what you do. No, of his film.
Well, it's not what Fondazione do, but I guess that Prada will have nothing.
He could ask.
Yes.
Okay. What do you think that the association with Prada brings? Because yes, there's some funding, but it's not just the funding. You're going to be able to help maybe amplify these auteurs or give them a sort of seal of approval in a way?
I think that the work that Fondazione Prada does in the arts, it's very well recognized, and he has his prestige and he has his importance, and in the independence in way in which they work, in the choice of artists that they support, it's very important, and it's a seal of a real engagement in artistic research. And I think that, of course, Prada is a well-recognized brand, and I think that the mention of the Fondazione Prada among the financier of the film
looks
help
very
the
impressive.
visibility of
Also,
it.
we know that it's been through a rigorous selection process.
Yes.
How many did you announce how many applications you got, or?
Yeah, they were exceeding a little bit our expectation. We got 1,200 applications.
For 10?
14 projects
14
selected.
projects,
It's very difficult to get.
Yeah.
But we do have, we work with professionals from the industry, people that are established in their field for the selection. So we have a pool of readers, and then we have a selection committee that works following the recommendation of our readers.
Yeah. But also, Paolo Moretti was telling me that, I don't know how I'm going to mispronounce her name, Mrs. Prada, comes in at the very end to sort of listen into the discussion as well.
Yes, I mean, the engagement of Fondazione Prada for the cinema comes primarily by the love of
she loves
Prada for cinema.
Yeah.
And this is very tangible, and it's very present in the way she engages in discovering, clearly reading, and appreciating the proposal that the fund says.
Yeah, thank you. I want to ask the next question to hopefully Brian and Elsa, and we've already touched on it, but it's very case by case. Every structure of every film is probably different, even without a brand. But you're not really seeing, and even when we say YSL funded Emilia Perez, they didn't fully fund it, as far as I'm aware. So what kind of different structures might we see in, is it, like you said, is it sometimes maybe they put in 10% of the equity as a gap? Or do we ever see brands maybe fully funding more short form content, or maybe like a documentary format that's a little bit cheaper to produce? Elsa, do you want to start?
It's all over the map. And so you have the example of the 20% of the equity that I mentioned from REI. We have other brands that we work with that can fully finance a feature-length film. Most of the brands that we've worked with are usually doing what you would call lower budget films, usually definitely under 10 million, often under 5. When they're funding short films, they're often pretty healthy budgets for a short. They're usually funding like 150,000 to 300,000 US for a short film. So like Indeed is one of our clients, and they fund 10 films. It's through a grant competition as well. And then they give them each, in that case, 150,000, and they pair them with Lena Waithe and her production company. So they have a professional producer helping them make their first-time films. And then they pay, and this is the best part about having a brand involved, is brands have not just money, but also marketing know-how. And right now, we're trying to, as filmmakers, anyone in this audience who's making a film, you're trying to break through the noise of TikTok and Instagram and everything else that's out there. And most of your distributors don't know jack shit about marketing, but brands do. Yeah. Unless they're named A24 or Neon, they probably don't know or Disney, they probably don't know marketing. But brands do, and if they let the distributor do their job, they can bring in that additional marketing support. That's butts in seats and that's eyeballs on the screen. But I think you're seeing all kinds of structures, so you might have other examples.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, well, obviously we see very, very different kinds of structuring and financing. It would not be very interesting to go through them today. But I think what's interesting to hear or to share is that, I mean, from my perspective, working with different brands. And obviously, luxury houses have been one of my most important clients, but I also work with different brands.
Normal brands.
Normal brands. Say standard brands, whatever. But what comes up each time is that they don't really have a clue on how to do it. There are very, very few brands, even with a lot of money and a lot of structuring and very competent people inside, who actually go a step further and hire competent professionals from the industry to navigate this in-house. That's the reason why at some point
we need you.
I get into the picture. But my point is, as they are not so professionalized, except for Red Bull probably, but as they are not so professionalized about the whole system, they have this feeling and they have those personal acquaintances with some people from the industry that make them sort of want to do something but not really know how to do it. And one of the ambitions that I work on and I really hope will turn out to be real for the next years is helping the brands and the producers to side with like premium talents, because obviously we can't emphasize enough the fact that brands are not looking, and maybe exceptionally from certain other perspectives like the foundation with Prada, but again, the regular brands who are not structured for that will only be really diving into a film if there's some kind of talent attached that rings a bell to them.
That means something. Even we heard the Japanese example
exactly. So
auteurs,
my point is that's one of the steps where you're like, okay, that's great. You're gonna invest into like top premium directors or top actors. That's great, but that's only 2% of the whole film industry, or 1%, whatever. So it's not really solving the problem of how we can work on a very more global and valuable basis with brands. So one of my ideas, which I've been working on, is trying to use the package of or the association of producers with top talents to, of course, try to make slates on their own projects, but also include in this slate some more fragile and more difficult to finance films, and sort of work hand in hand with brands who are, of course, for some of them, appetent to actually move forward into this industry and structure the things a little differently, and work on a scheme where they don't just finance on a case-to-case with potentially one director or one talent that they've been identifying as someone who's actually sort of compatible with their house, because that's also a question of image and what you convey to your clients. And this is, of course, I'm sure, a very important part to the brand's choice of which film to pick. But then if we look into something more global and more industrial, it makes sense to have like a typology of a directors or a DNA of films that you can cover, and then put like some kind of annual money.
Okay, like a slate deal more. That's
exactly.
I mean, that's what every producer dreams of, some slate funding. Yeah.
But it would work if again the brands were a little more assisted and more helped on this side, and also if talents would side with producers to work on the subject, which is something we're really very, very close to.
Yeah, we're close. Yes.
Very close to it.
Yeah. Philip, can I come back to you just at Red Bull? How, you've got this arm. So are you only developing projects in-house? How many pitches a year do you get? How do you decide who, you touched on it a little bit. They need to sort of align with what Red Bull is all about, obviously. But how do you decide on talent, is it mostly English language? How do you decide what films you're going to be involved in?
Well, obviously we have a strategy that we follow and very clear criteria that might change over time. But to just give you, I would say, a healthy third is developed, and then we try to go out and package it and find co-financiers and put it together in the right way. A third comes to us, and that could be anything from to give you a crass example, from a first-time filmmaker, but could also be very established production companies that feel they have something
got the
that
right
speak to
move.
us. And the last third kind of comes out of the dialogue with the filmmakers, with the production companies, maybe even with a partner brand, even though I couldn't recall a specific example. They usually, other brands come in later. And just to add to what you were saying, and maybe to clarify, I'm talking about unscripted, whereas you're clearly talking about the scripted space. So that gets and I just want to make sure I understood right. You were saying clearly brands are marketing experts, and you were saying brands need film marketing experts to do the job.
Okay.
And I agree with both of you.
Both, okay.
And I
love
agree
it.
with both of you because, and again, talking from the documentary unscripted space, so brands do know marketing very well. If they don't know marketing, they cease to exist. But they don't know film marketing.
Or they don't know the film industry.
And this is where I bring the arc back to us, because sometimes sometimes we're perceived as a brand, sometimes we're perceived as a production company, and it's always reading the room and translations. Apart from being a production company, we are a translation office, and we actually do that translation work because, largely speaking, the marketing competence sits with the brand, and the expertise of bringing a film to people is with experts. But bringing those together and making that environment and that biotope blossom is what we're after and what we try to enable and what we try to tap in. And I think that's what
I
allows
like
both
you're
of
bridging
those.
it. Yeah. Philip, are you, obviously you work quite a bit with feature documentaries.
Absolutely.
But what about short form? Are you, especially we hear attention spans are dying, I don't know. But you're still interested in long form documentaries, or do you ever do short form as well?
I would say what we do in the studios is premium content, because cinema, I think you put yourself in a very dangerous space between documentary and cinema and saying that's what we do. In spirit, we're making films for the big screen. In reality, it's premium content. And as we are following a commercial approach, as any production company would, we haven't found the way to monetize short format content, especially doing it as a brand. Plus, there's other arms of Red Bull doing amazing branded stuff, and they do it as a marketing spend with no need to recoup. And so, as Red Bull, we feel that's the safer place for the short format play. But we're essentially format agnostic, but often end up with the premium doc, roughly 90-minute format or premium series.
Okay, great. Can I send the mic down to Rebecca? I just wanted to ask I'm sure people here want to know, how do they become one of those 1,200 to apply? So when's your next round of applications? And also, will the films get to screen at the Fondation Amazing Cinema? Or, will you try to at all, and they're going to exist as their own, but, Prada does a lot in Venice, probably. Will you try to shape how they come into the world, or you're very hands-off?
So important information, next call is about to start. It will be launched during the summer and it will be open probably 2 months. Actually, when we select a project, beside the artistic quality, we are also pretty much looking into the production structure, the strength of the production structure, and actually we trust our partner in the capabilities of like marketing their own films, as we are saying. And there is, of course, a screening in the Fondazione Prada Cinema. But this, in any case, it's something which can down the way, and after the film has done its festivals. In any case, the Fondazione doesn't want to put itself in between the way of the film and its best release.
Okay, that's good to know. Brian, I wanted to come back to you because I know you, in past few years, you've been working a lot on the distribution piece of this puzzle. And where are you seeing, either very lightly branded content or branded content, like I Never Knew Perfect Days was, came from the Toilet Project. So where are you seeing the opportunities to actually get this content out in the world, and are people making money?
Yeah, I think that the reality is it's a really shitty market right now for films and distribution. Yes. So, Netflix is buying less and Hulu's buying less, and distributors in the US are losing what they call their pay one deals. That's also impacting what brand films are getting picked up. So it used to be my business, we're almost like a boutique sales agency and service deal distributor only for brand films. We never make the films out of my company. We always distribute them and market them with the brands. And it used to be we could say, if you work with these good filmmakers, we can probably make sure you're going to premiere at a good film festival, and we'll sell it to a Netflix or a Nat Geo or someone like that. And increasingly what we're doing is moving more into early stage development and going out and pitching things at an early stage to the marketplace. And if it doesn't get any traction with HBO or Netflix or whoever it may be, then we don't do that project. Or we'll make a short film that you think is a short film when you see it on their website. It's actually a pitch for what might become a series or a feature. Yeah. And that way, if the brand has spent money on it, they have not wasted their money. They have something they can launch on their channel, but we can also behind the scenes be pitching it as a potential series. And we've had some of those work out. And I think just like the industry has switched a lot to episodic content, more of our brands are doing episodic. So the Oatly example was one, but we also just had a project from Lowe's, the home improvement store. It wasn't a home improvement store. As we call it. Yeah, a DIY store, okay. It's where you go to buy construction equipment and make your kitchen and all that kind of stuff. And they made a series about the fact that across the world we're running out of plumbers and electricians, and people don't think of these as good jobs to go into, but they are, and they pay well. And they made a series about it, and we sold it to HBO and Warner Brothers Discovery. Currently Warner Brothers Discovery, we'll see what it becomes. And so you're seeing more of that. And then I think we've seen a big shift to short form, specifically because the brand knows that if it doesn't get picked up for distribution, they can push it out themselves because they have the power to do that. But it's a rough and tumble market, so everyone's trying different approaches.
Yeah, Philip, I should have asked this earlier. How many Instagram or social media followers does Red Bull have?
As simple as the question might sound, it's very hard to quantify because there's specialized channels. And again, but I'm going to give you an example that speaks to the dilemma and connects to what you were saying. So Red Bull has a number of really well-oiled social media channels. And as proud as they might be of any one studio production, it's very hard for us to put the right piece of content on the Red Bull channel to, on the one hand, make the connection to the film and get our message across, and on the other hand, not disturb the flow of these well-oiled social channels. And this is part of the translation job. So I could give you very many numbers with a lot of digits for various Red Bull channels, but it's a tailor-made suit for each project, and then we try to tap into this in the right way with our brand, with Red Bull, but also with other partner brands. And sometimes it goes more along lines of classical distribution, which also plays out in social, but not necessarily first and foremost on Red Bull channels.
Thank you. I'm realizing, I can't believe it, we're almost running towards the end of time. Not the end of time. There's no apocalypse hitting us. I don't want to die in Cannes. That's my great wish. But I just wanted to end with each of you with one piece of advice. I think especially for, I think this crowd probably has more directors and producers in it than it would have brand representatives because they don't know to be here yet. So I'm just wondering, one piece of advice for filmmakers when you are trying to work with brands, maybe how to approach them, who you approach, do you need an intermediary in most cases? Rebecca, you're a little bit different, but any piece of advice to start with you on people who are going to apply to the fund, how to make a great application?
I'm asked a lot about this. There is no secret about it. At the end of the day, it's the project itself. Then it's going to speak. We have eligibility criteria, which are very simple.
Read the criteria. This helps.
Read the website. But again, there is no special technique or no strange way to approach us. We are approachable with our contacts on the website. What is paying off? It's the project itself. it's the artistic quality of it.
Okay. Put
But
your best foot
I
forward
understand
with
I'm
your
very
project.
different from
Yeah.
from you because it's getting a little
You're a
bit
little
more
different.
complicated. on
Yeah. Elsa, what would be your advice to producers, to filmmakers who want to learn more, to actually pitch brands? Do they need someone like you? They might.
Always.
Yeah.
Of course. No, I'd say beyond taking any advice from anyone, it would really be trying to introduce the idea of approaching brands at a very early stage. I mean, you want to incorporate into your script, whether as a producer or as the script writer and potential director, which kind of brands you want to approach. And obviously, there are some misfits that you are just very much, anyone is very able to understand. I mean, you don't have to work in brand marketing to know that Chanel is not going to, finance a film about action and war or something very, very pushy and very edgy. I don't know. It wouldn't make much sense. I mean, they could change their setup and strategy, but it would not make very much sense. So I'd say also the nature and the themes of the film are sort of a good indicator of which brands you want to approach. And then in terms of how to do that, well, I think you need to be a little creative and bully, and as most producers should be anyways, in a very disrupted and difficult market. So you want to push doors and look at, the names of the marketing and image and communication people from the brands, because again, beyond the very, very few examples like Prada or Red Bull or Chanel, who has, for example, someone dedicated to film, most of the other brands, and I'm just trying to speak out loud out of who I know, don't have a specific dedicated department to film financing. So
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, as producers or filmmakers, you should knock on the door of people from the marketing, from communications, or from every side departments to the brand itself, and try to see how they can approach your film and why it would be clever to approach it. I'd say, just to finish, differently from the regular partners of the industry who obviously know what their job is and how to invest into the film, I think producers and filmmakers should be much more proactive and trying to put themselves in the position of the brand executive and think...
Convince them. Why? Why would they?
And so give them the arguments to go for it and not just wait for people to react, obviously.
Good advice. Philip.
I totally subscribe to that. In our case, you don't even have to run in the door. Doors are open. We're a small team.
Is there a website where, I'm not going to ask you to give your email out publicly, but there's a website.
There's a website, and so we're not hiding. It's not complicated to get through us. We're fairly small, as I said, very small company in a much larger environment. So it might be difficult to get straight to us. But if you have a viable proposition to the entertainment market at large, and you have the gut feeling that you were describing, I don't know Red Bull exactly, but this could fit. Hit us up. We won't close doors. We look at a lot of projects. We're a small team, so please accept our answers in case they should be no. We're in same
like any other
same scale of things we're looking at over the year, as you mentioned, and as any festivals is dealing with. I mean, that's the numbers of applications that are happening, and but we love to look at everything and love to engage in dialogue. And we're a specific arm. If you have other Red Bull related ideas, there's local organizations that can be talked to, but I think for the purposes of this, here Red Bull Studios, based in Salzburg, based in Los Angeles, and can be found on the internet. We look forward to the conversations.
Great. And Brian, you think a lot about this. What do filmmakers need to know?
Well, I think when you break into this industry, you have to learn a lot about how do film funds work, how do investors work, how does a waterfall work, all these different things. You have to also do that with brands. So you have to really do your research. And it's really easy to find the people who are involved in this. Just look at, a little longer after this, you'll have Cannes Lions. They're giving awards to brand-funded films. Look at who accepts the award. And you can find the names of these people, and now you can find anyone on LinkedIn. And every brand I've worked with that says they don't take a pitch has funded at least one project that came in as a cold pitch. But you've got to really know the brand. So if you watch online before you pitch, a Red Bull film looks very different than a North Face film and looks very different than a Patagonia film. That you have to know the brand intimately, so you're not pitching them the same deck that you pitch to the other person. It's got to be tailored to them and why it matters to their brand. You still make your film, don't change the film, but you have to understand why the brand would want to be involved in your film and pitch it the right way. So you just have to do that research.
Excellent tips. This is one of my favorite afternoons of the whole year because I get to talk to such smart people. Thank you all for taking part and being so honest, and I've learned a lot, and I think the audience has too. I also want to just say a reminder that the Displacement Film Fund, of which Uniqlo is one of the partners, is going to announce their new raft of fundies on Monday, so keep an eye on that. That's some good work. And I want to say a big congratulations to Guillaume and Alexandra and Lexion on the 4th year of Investor Circle. As I mentioned, I just think it's such important talks about private equity. We all need to know more, and this has been really eye-opening. And I think in a few days you'll be able to Google what projects are pitching to very wealthy people tomorrow. But a huge thanks to the Marché for putting this on, and for all of our special guests, and for you for being a great audience in the heat. Thank you.